Any of these different types of alarms can get escalated to become what we call an incident. And an incident can contain multiple alarms. So the idea is that if we have that scenario where the switch going down blocks access to several of the servers, we can actually have that rolled up into a single incident that goes out with one set of notifications and actions. You can also use rules to forcibly correlate alarms together. So for example, if you have bandwidth alarms going off on a particular site, any latency alarms that come from devices at that site are probably related to the bandwidth alarm. So we can have a rule that'll just cluster all those into the same alert and not re-alert you based on additional conditions that are just part of that same root cause. Alarms can come from host alerts, thresholds, as we mentioned, services, which are kind of application checks. It can be syslog or event log messages. It can be configuration change messages. All of these things can generate alarms. An alarm then can create or be added to an incident. So all the related alarms will be part of the incident. And then that incident is what actually takes an action. So the incident is going to be able to do an action, what we call an action group. Action groups can be things like notifications, which can be emails, SMS, that can be webhook, which is an API to plug into notification services. So if you're using something like PagerDuty or OpsGenie, or if you're using Slack or Twitter or other communications methods, you can plug in with the webhooks. It can also be active response. An active response is where we actually take an action against the primary alarm system, like running an SSH script or running a PowerShell script against that system to actually do something. It can also be, active response can also be webhook. So for example, if it's a cloud-hosted system, I might send a webhook to the API that forces that system to reboot as part of that active response. When you look at incidents, they're going to be in one of a few different states. The open state is where all incidents start, and it means that the alarms are critical or down. It will stay in that open state until all of the alarms recover. Or someone takes an action against it. So open incidents generate actions. And then again, you can also define custom notifications with incident management rules that were based on this open action. Active response methods only happen when the incident is first opened. So for example, if I'm running a script that might reboot a server, I don't want to run that multiple times. I want to try that once. So it only happens when the incident initially opens. And if it succeeds and the thing recovers, you'll get a notification saying that it recovered. If it doesn't succeed, you'll get a notification that shows that it's an open incident. Now, you can acknowledge incidents. So this is when a user goes in and acknowledges the incident either by, the web interface, the mobile app, the email interface. By replying to the alert, you can acknowledge the problem if you set that up. Once a problem is acknowledged, it will stop any further escalation and re-notification. So one of the common things we see in a lot of configurations is people who are complaining about getting too many notifications from the system. It's partially because they've set it up to re-notify them if something stays down, but they're not acknowledging those problems. So they're getting those re-notification messages. If you've configured escalation, acknowledging it stops that escalation process as well. Once you acknowledge an incident, all of the related alarms in that incident, so all of those different systems, will also be marked as acknowledged. You can also put notes into an acknowledgement, and they'll go out to anybody who got that alert. So if it's already escalated, they would also get the acknowledgement message. Whoever it escalated to would also get the acknowledgement, the recovery messages as well. And anything you type in that acknowledgement will go out with that. So if you've opened a trouble ticket or a incident with the vendor, all that information can be encapsulated into that message. Once the issue is acknowledged, it'll change the color in the web interface. It'll turn it blue so that everyone can tell that it's not a net new problem, and they can take action based on that. There's a state called alarms cleared, and alarms cleared is basically a holding pattern that means that all of the alarms have recovered, but we're waiting to make sure they're stable before doing anything else about it. So the alarms cleared state is temporary. It typically is set to 5 minutes, and basically it's just making sure that it's not a problem that's going to recur. So if you have an interface flapping, for example, when it recovers, it'll go into an alarms cleared state, and if it goes down again within that 5 minutes, it'll reopen the same incident. It won't create a new incident, so it won't generate additional notifications. If you acknowledge something, and it goes into the alarms cleared state and then recurs, it'll stay acknowledged. So it allows you to kind of keep things, in a relatively good state, even if they're flapping or intermittent problems. Once the issues have remained cleared for that entire timer, the incident moves into a closed state and it gets archived, and then notifications will be sent out based on that. In OmniCenter, you'll also see the term active incidents used. Active incidents are any incidents that are not closed. So whether it's open, acknowledged, or alarms cleared, it'll show as an active incident. This is different than, for example, the knock dashboard, which only shows open incidents. So acknowledging something would remove it from that list. The active incidents list will still show it. Accident incidents, you'll actually see them on the dashboards as well as on the active incidents page. Now, just quickly, I'm going to walk through the state diagram, and this is all in the documentation online. So if it gets a little confusing, I apologize, but there's a lot to it. But I want to make sure you kind of see what the state diagram looks like. So the idea is any new alarm comes in, it looks at the incident rules that could apply to it, see if there's anything already related to it. If not, it will open a new incident. When that new incident opens, it will generate active response as well as notifications. So all the new incident actions happen at that point. If nothing is done with this and there's a re-notification set, it will, after that timer expires, re-notify and or escalate based on your configuration. If a user takes action to acknowledge the problem, it'll move into the acknowledged state and it'll send out a notification to anybody who got the critical message that the problem's been acknowledged. From there, once all the alarms recover, you're going to go into that alarms cleared state and it's going to run that default timer. If it recurs, you're going to go back to the state you started from. So if you came from acknowledged, you go back to acknowledged. If you came from open, you go back to open. If that timer expires and everything stays okay, you move into the closed state and then the last set of notifications is sent out, indicating that the incident has been closed.